Actually, Tim Walz, the First Amendment does protect misinformation and hate speech. I talked about it a while ago, a few videos ago, where Tim Walz was caught on video talking about how the First Amendment don't protect misinformation and hate speech. You don't have a right to misinform, and I stated that. Well, actually, you do. You do have a right to misinform. If that was not true, we would not have any politicians. With politicians lying to us on a daily basis would be illegal. But the First Amendment protect all speech, pretty much all speech, whether you like it or not, truth or lies, it doesn't matter. We have a right to that speech. And this article here from National Review echoes my sentiment. So that's why I wanted to cover this article. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Also, check out my link tree in the description. Has a link to my Patreon. That's where I talk about things that I can't talk about here. Also, follow me on X as well, where I post tons of news throughout the day as well. All right, so let's talk about this news now. This comes from the National Review from David and Sarah. And he reports that Kamala Harris's running mate is wrong. Free speech, including potentially misleading or offensive speech, isn't a threat to democracy. After Vice President Kamala Harris picked Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her 2024 running mate, a video made the rounds showing Walz saying in an interview that there is, quote, no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy. While such a sentiment has become disturbingly popular, which I don't even understand, and if you just take a cursory view of the First Amendment, and you would know that that statement is definitely not true, and at least not constitutionally true. But disturbingly popular with some Americans and policymakers like Governor Walz, it is incorrect. Again, I agree, it's definitely incorrect. The First Amendment does guarantee free speech when it comes to both misinformation and hate speech. You have a right to hate whoever you want. You can talk about, you can verbalize that hate all you want, but you cannot stop that person from expressing their views either. You have a right to that. But individuals and public officials may detest and condemn such speech, and platforms may choose not to carry it. But to insert the government into regulation of such expression will both set a troubling precedent and undermine our current First Amendment principles in ways that should concern Americans across the political spectrum. Most definitely. While policymakers and individuals may think they are protecting the public from potential harm or propaganda, laws that would allow the government to regulate misinformation would quickly risk trampling on the ability to discuss a wide array of political and social issues. I mean, look what's going on in Great Britain. That's when this conversation came about with me on X and stuff. Look at what's going on in Great Britain, where if you express yourself that's anywhere to the contrary of popular belief, you can be arrested and thrown in jail, and that's just crazy to me. And they're actually threatening Americans with that same thing, with extraditing Americans. And I wish they would try that. Please try that, Great Britain. You will have another revolutionary war on your hands if you try to extradite anyone from because they express their First Amendment rights in our own country. But I digress. The consensus about what is true regarding sensitive topics such as abortion, the Middle East, and the COVID-19 pandemic can change rapidly. In terms of misinformation, so much of what is called misinformation is simply information that individuals may disagree about or that may not be fully understood. While Walz is right that we have laws surrounding specific concerns like voter intimidation, yeah, that's different. You're trying to prevent someone from exercising their rights, so of course that's not legal. You can't intimidate someone into not voting. That's illegal, of course. And voting interference, of course, is also illegal. Of course, you're interfering with, again, someone else's rights, and that prohibit defamation. Straight up lying about people, and the vast majority of speech, even what some may consider detestable, is generally protected regardless of whether it is true. And that's true. I mean, That's facts. That's true. As long as you're not trampling on someone else's rights, you have a right to express how you feel. But maybe in the future, our understanding will change and long held truths will be proven wrong. Even when something is certifiably false, we protect the right of people to be wrong, something for which Walz should be thankful for in this case, right? Engaging with ideas can help us understand one another even when we disagree and may help us develop more thorough understandings of complicated issues and the often gray areas in fact of fact and belief. And that's true. Like for instance, Richard Dawkins. I'm no fan of Richard Dawkins. I don't believe in his evolutionary biology. Uh, but he has a right to express how he feels, and I don't think Facebook have a right to delete his account because he said a man is a man and a woman is a woman. That's just utterly crazy. I mean, he has freedom of speech. He has a right to make that statement. But people like Facebook decide they're the arbiters of truth, and you can only speak a certain way. And if you go anywhere divergent to what they believe, they have a right to get rid of you and delete you like you don't exist, which I believe is wrong for anyone to do. But the government becoming the official arbiter, which is even worse than these corporations, I believe, arbiters of truth would risk silencing voices and stifling legitimate debate on important issues where there is not always clearly a right answer. Similarly, hate speech is generally protected by the First Amendment, and it is. There is no universally agreed upon definition of hate speech, which it isn't, and certainly not in an American context. The Supreme Court famously confirmed in 1977 that neo-Nazis had a right to peacefully protest in Skokie, Illinois, a town with a substantial number of Holocaust survivors. And even though, I detest Nazis, I believe they absolutely have a right to protest. Just like the divestment group. People are upset and trying to stop people from divesting from Israel, but they have a right to divest. That's why I disagree with DeSantis on that. They have a right to divest. If you don't want to support a group because you feel they're against your principles, you have every right to do, and the First Amendment agrees with that. That's why I really that's when I stop really liking DeSantis when he started caping for Israel on that. But the American Civil Liberties Union defended the neo-Nazis because now do you think the Civil Liberties Union would do that today? Do you think the ACLU would do that today? They would definitely not do that today. But back then, ACLU knew that if the neo-Nazis would lose their rights, they will also lose their rights as well. They were smart enough to know that back then, and now the ACLU is just this the left, another wing of the Democrat Party, pushing these crazy agendas that has nothing to do with the constitutional stuff that they try to protect, the civil liberties that they used to try to protect back in the day. But it goes on to say the neo-Nazis, because in the words of Executive Director Araya Nair, who as a child fled from Nazi Germany, quote, the chances are best for preventing a repetition of the Holocaust in a society where every incursion of freedom is resisted. It is important to remember that power to regulate speech could be used by those with whom you disagree just as much as those with whom you agree. Walz and Harris opponents certainly have their own ways they like to use such powers. Senator J.D. Vance, now the Republican VP candidate, has called for banning porn and seizing the assets of foundations that support progressive causes. And I'm as a free speech absolutionist, I definitely do not agree with J.D. Vance on that. And former President Donald Trump has regularly criticized libel laws that make it hard to punish his political opponents for what he perceives as false statements made about him. And again, I'm a principled person. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. I don't agree with this. You should be allowed to make whatever statements you want If they're not true, then the other person has a right to speak their truth. So that's why we have debates. And if the debates are honest, no one would be censored, and you'd be able to speak your truth. But giving government power to broadly censor, quote, bad speech should give all Americans pause. I agree. In the midst of major social debates over contentious issues, suppressing speech that we find wrong and hateful is counterproductive to making progress as a society. Free speech, including potentially misleading or offensive speech, isn't a threat to democracy. Rather, it is essential for democracy. And I 1000% agree with that statement. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this. Leave your comments down below. Like, share, subscribe, and check out jjthepsychotherapist.com for the latest in news. Until next time, peace.